So it's actually been a little bit since I was pulling on the tree because I got sick. And basically all I've done so far is just take a 3-pound sledge and some other tools and kind of get it banged back out. It does not look pretty, but that's not the point. So what else I'm doing is getting the door and fender ready. So I'm prepping this door shell here. That's good. So this is a driver door. Obviously it's the wrong color, but what we're gonna do is go ahead and paint it to a pretty similar color. It might not match completely, but it's better than this blue. I also have a new rear bumper cover, new crash supports, all sorts of miscellaneous parts. There's some taillights. I already went ahead and painted this mirror the color, so this is the color we're gonna go with. It's just a generic lacquer silver, and then it's got 2K clear. So as far as paint match, it's pretty close, maybe a little more sparkly, but it'll work for now. So for clear coat, this is what I use. It is the Spray Max 2K Clear Glamour. It's a 2-part system. You puncture this on the bottom, shake it up. It'll mix in a hardening agent, and it works really well. It's just like automotive clear coat. It's gas resistant, chemical resistant, UV resistant, all that. So it works super well. It looks just like OEM. It's a great clear coat, especially if you're just wanting to do something small and you just want to use a spray can. Obviously, I'd like to upgrade my setup to a spray gun, but for now, I'm a little limited. I got a new space. It's just a little 2-car garage. Don't have a giant compressor and all the tools to do anything too fancy. So for now, we're just working with what we got. So we got our final coat of color on. So now we'll just spray it with 2K clear. We'll get a nice heavy layer on. If there are runs, we'll just wet sand it out, but hopefully we won't have any because it's a little easier of a panel to work with than a fender. So I got the door all painted and clear coated, but I did mess up my base coat, so I do have some discoloration of the metallic where either the flake laid the wrong way or maybe I didn't sand the primer perfectly smooth. So we can actually see the defects through the clear coat. I went ahead and also wet sanded and buffed it just to see if it would come out, and it won't, so that does mean we're gonna have to repaint this door. So I went ahead and took off the skirt, the door, and the fender, and I will say on this car, taking the front fender off is very difficult because you basically have to detach the bumper, take out all the liners, take off the side skirt. You don't have to take off the door, but there's a bolt behind it. It's all sorts of work. There's our old fender, and I'm gonna go ahead and swap on the new fender. That's all painted, and then we will go from there. So filming a little update a couple days later, I did get the fender on, I got the door on, the new mirror on, and I got everything swapped into the new door. So as we can see, the new door has the door panel and everything swapped, all the windows work. I swapped the windows into the new shell, all sorts of stuff. It was really a pain. If you are gonna do something like this, like swap windows on a Miata, make sure that you actually put the door, or the window, I should say, about halfway up, because your access bolts to remove the window are right around here if the window's up here. And if you have the window all the way down, like I did, like an idiot, all the bolts will be hidden behind one of the service panels, and it will be almost impossible to remove. Not quite impossible, because I did do it, but just a quick little tip. So overall, I'm pretty happy with the door and fender. There is one little issue here where this doesn't quite line up as good as I want. There's a very slight gap going on down here. So as you can see, it gets tighter up here and bigger down here. So I'm thinking I may need to reshim or realign the door hinge. But overall, it opens and closes smoothly, so I'm not terribly concerned about anything major. So from the front angles, it's starting to look like a regular car again. As we can see, there are still some small dings and dents and maybe paint work I want to take care of, but for now, we're actually starting to get our main structure done. Obviously, once we come back here, we can still see there's major quarter panel damage, and this will be our next step. Basically, all this is just test fit on here. They are mounted solid, but I just wanted it basically to be a complete vehicle. Technically, this could go on the road. I have to see what the Texas rebuilt process looks like. I may actually have to replace this before I do it, which I'm fine with. I just would like to be able to drive it. There are a couple maintenance items we'll want to take care of before we actually drive the car on the road. One is an oil change. I think it's within 500 miles of the next oil change. Also, I think it was slightly low when I got it, but it's always just a good rule of thumb to go ahead and change the oil and filter. And then another thing we got to do is take care of the common issue with the Miatas, which is the coolant tank. So as we can actually see, this is not really sitting flush, and if we open it, we can actually see that this is beginning to crack. So we can see that this whole lip is actually bulging and cracking because these get very old and brittle and the plastic just deteriorates. So if this were to let go and break while we're driving it, it could potentially overheat and ruin the motor. So definitely going to replace this, as well as just replace all the coolant and get that all fresh. So the new coolant tank came in, so we'll go ahead and pull the old one and replace it because this one is definitely bad. So it's been a hot minute, but we have finally started taking apart the Miata. Got it up on jack stands here and starting to work away at the quarter. To get the quarter off the car, I'm using a belt sander. That way we can basically destroy this panel, but get clean flat metal underneath. And then if you hear outside, we have the donor quarter out here. I got Kendall slaving away.
Oh yeah.
Drilling holes. We're gonna drill the holes out of all that, the spot welds, and then we're gonna go ahead and take that metal, clean metal, and weld it onto the car. And we did have to strip out basically all of the rear interior, including the soft top, just to get this weather seal off. So yeah, that is unfortunate. Otherwise we would have maybe been able to weld with the top on, but this just gets everything out of the way. It's gonna be a little easier to work on, but we'll go ahead, get this quarter pulled off, and then we can kind of start assessing what's underneath it, as well as these panels. These should come off pretty quick since they're already missing half their spot welds anyways. So we kind of got the quarter panel off here. Went ahead and went through, grinded all the mating surfaces down, put weld through primer on, and got everything pretty well straightened up. so we can go ahead and mount the new quarter panel. And over here we have our donor panel that we've gone ahead and drilled out every spot weld, saved the panels that we need, and prepped it. So now it is time to go ahead, put it on the car. We already trimmed it up, and it's gonna be time to weld it on and see how everything fits. So we got the quarter panel mocked up here. It's looking pretty good. Everything seems to be lining up. Everything's prepped, got the clamps on, so we'll kind of clamp, weld, and then kind of just work our way back. Mainly because we want to make sure this door gap's going to be proper, so gonna get that good to go, and then worry about the trunk and bumper alignment. So I got most of the welding done. The up front part is pretty much done. Did most of inside of the wheel well. I still need to kind of finish up some of the welding and then grind it off. So basically what I'm doing is doing like a little plug weld in there, getting it nice and hot, a good contact, and then just grind it flush, and then any tiny little imperfections that are still there we can just kind of fill and prime and paint. So I think this will look pretty good once it's done. We already got everything that's going to be visible very flush, and then anything that's not so visible I just kind of ground down pretty flat. Not worried about perfection in there visual wise, but overall I think it's going pretty good, making pretty good progress. So I'll wrap up welding here and get it primed and then go from there. So it's been a little bit, but we went ahead and primed everything, got all the final welds done, and then I went ahead and put glazing putty on just the little defects in the door jamb and stuff, since we will probably see those. So gonna let that dry, sand it smooth. I'll then go ahead and prime the whole panel. That way it's all good to go with fillable sander, go back over it, sand it once again, and then we can finally go ahead and actually paint it with our color and then our clear coat. So that will be kind of our next steps. Everything's all sealed up. It would technically be good to just go right now, but obviously we kind of want it painted, and it's going to be the easiest time now versus later. Alright, so we made good progress and everything is now primed, blocked. Everything's looking pretty good. As we can see, our door jamb's looking pretty smooth here, which I'm pretty happy with because we can't really even see the welds except right on the pinch, but not worried about that since trim is going to cover it up, so I'll just leave those for the most part. Other than that, everything's looking pretty nice. So I went ahead and wet sanded the primer, so we'll give that a little bit to dry, and then I also went ahead and already just sprayed paint in here. It was just a paint and primer in one because that's not going to be seen, we just need it sealed off. So that's already painted, and basically now we're just going to put color on all up here and then wait, and then put 2K clear on it so it's pretty durable and it will match the other panels that I replaced. So we got our first layer of color on, so At this point, I have gone ahead, let it dry, sanded it, and then touched up some little stuff that I still didn't like. Now we'll put our final coat of paint on, and then we can go ahead and put clear coat on. So we got our final layer of color on, and now it's time for clear coat. What we're gonna do is make sure to clear coat the inside lip very well around the gas fill up, because if gas gets under the clear coat, it will peel up the paint. So we have to just make sure our edges are nice and coated with clear coat and protected. So I got one coat of clear on. It's looking pretty decent, but now we're gonna go ahead and throw our second coat on. I gave it about 10 minutes to just tack up, so that should be good enough so we don't get sags when we throw a second layer on. It's coming together pretty good now. I went ahead and actually put all the interior trim back in, and everything's in on the passenger side. I'm still gonna wait a little while for this. I wanna wait at least about 24 hours before I actually mount anything up to the new paint. It's been about 8 now, but I just don't want anything to get stuck and then peel and give us issues. So still waiting on that to dry, but what I went ahead and did was I sprayed some undercoating in the wheel wells to seal that all up. Everything already had a good bit of undercoating on it, so I figured I'd just go ahead and match it. You can see that stuff's just older. This stuff's pretty fresh, but basically it's getting pretty close to the big final steps, which will just be mounting all the body panels and taillights on the rear. So I went ahead and got the new brackets, put all the wires back, put the braces back. I still have to mount up a couple things, but at this point, it's about to all come together. I think we can go ahead and put the wheel on now that we got the whole arch sprayed with undercoating, and probably put it on the ground. A few hours, and I went ahead and put this trim on because it's not really on the paint, and I put this sensor on. So I'm just gonna wait another few hours before I go ahead and put the two brackets on, just because they mount directly to the paint and I don't want anything to get bonded while it's drying. But overall, this was pretty simple. It was just 3 little clips up here, and then I'll go ahead and throw the seatbelt shroud on, and this will pretty much be good to go once we get those.
Wow.
So now have the trunk assembled and everything fit up pretty good. Everything's looking pretty good and really happy with it. And we really have a pretty complete car now. The last thing I did was also I went ahead and threw on the latch and the little bump stop down here. It's only 4 bolts, basically 2 here and 2 here, pretty simple. And I'm really happy with actually how everything ended up lining up. We can see that the door actually closes really nice, really easy, and the gap is very, very consistent. So pretty happy with how that all fit up. Paint work is not 10 out of 10, but you know what? It's good enough for doing it myself. Still pretty shiny. You can see, you know, a reflection. We could always wet sand and buff and do all that, but I figure someday if I really, really, really want to, I can go ahead and repaint all of what I have replaced with the proper paint match code and real clear and a real gun. But we're just working with what we got right now. The final thing really will be just to throw this side skirt on. I'm currently just waiting for some epoxy to set up because the 2 top tabs did break off. So we do have to wait for that to dry, and then probably tomorrow, once it's fully cured, we can go ahead and put the new clips in and then go ahead and pop it on there. So I think this is kind of where I will wrap up the Miata video. It is rebuilt. It took quite a long time, mainly just kind of sitting waiting for me to tear it apart. The quarter panel is definitely the biggest job. I mean, on camera it might not have looked that long, but it probably took a good 20 hours of labor to sand everything off, clean it up, get the donor panel off, and then get everything back together. So it was quite a lot of work, but overall, I wouldn't even say it was worth it because it is a Miata, and I probably put about 50, 60 hours of labor into getting it rebuilt. But a lot of it was just kind of a learning thing and getting to know the car, which I'm really glad I did it, but maybe next time we can do it on something a little more interesting. But yeah, overall, the car runs great, drives great, it's super fun. So I think all that's left is we'll take it out for a little spin and see how it drives. Well, it seems like the car runs pretty good and drives, but at the end there, after about 30 minutes of driving, we did get some clutch slip. So it looks like we might have to do a clutch job after all that work. So I guess we will do that in the next video.